Hi everyone, I'm Kate from General Assembly. Welcome to today's webinar, How to Kickstart Your Corporate Sustainability Plan. Thanks for joining us, and a big thank you to Max from Edge Environment for collaborating with us on this event. Before we commence our event, General Assembly Australia would like to acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first Australians and the traditional custodians of the lands where we live, learn, work, and pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Now to introduce General Assembly, we are a global tech education company helping people upskill in technology, business, data, and design. And our mission is to empower people to pursue the work that they love. You can visit us online at ga.co to check out all of our offerings, from classes and workshops to longer format courses and free events like this, currently all running live and online. Before we begin, I'm going to run through some housekeeping information for you. For this webinar, attendees will have no video and are muted, so don't worry if you can't see yourself. To participate in the webinar today, I'd like to point you down to the menu bar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You'll see two functions, the chat box and the Q&A. If you have any content-related questions for the presenters, please only ask those in the Q&A box, and we'll get to as many of those as we can at the end of the session. This is so we can have all our questions in the one place and we don't miss any. If you have any troubleshooting issues or GA-related inquiries or any general comments you'd like to make on today's event, please pop those in the chat box and I will follow up with you if necessary. Also, a recording of this will be sent out by the end of the week. Lastly, it would be wonderful if everyone at the end of the session today could fill out the feedback form, which I will post in the chat box. And without further ado, I'll now pass on to Max. Thanks so much.
Hello, how's it going, guys? I just had a look at the attendee list. That's a bit crazy. It looks like there's a whole bunch of people there I know. First of all, thank you very much, Kate, for doing the acknowledgement. I'm on the border of Gadigal and Ku-ring-gai land, and I also want to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, leaders past, present, and emerging. As I said, my name is Max. I'm Head of Sustainability at Edge Environment. Edge, for those of you who don't know, we're a sustainability consultancy. I'm here in Manly. We have offices in Adelaide and Melbourne and Santiago. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen. It's interesting seeing who's online. I think the weirdest thing about this whole thing is like this interface. I'm standing in a room by myself and it's telling me that there's like 30 people somewhere behind this screen here. Hello. You're probably having a lunch or maybe sitting there in your pajamas. If you are doing something cool with your time, maybe you're watching this on a beach, or you're on a yacht somewhere. If you are, chuck some of that interesting things in the chat because I'd like to know where you're watching this from. So let's say a little bit of a quick about me. I used to be an advertising strategist working in a large advertising firm. Had a personal crisis when I realized that advertising was mostly around selling stuff. I went away, retrained, and now I work as a sustainability strategist. I lead the sustainability team here at Edge, which essentially means that we work with organizations of all different shapes and sizes. Oops, are you seeing my notes? You can see my notes rather than, let's swap this around. Whoop. Is that better? Give me a thumbs up if that's better. Great. Awesome. How awkward is that? You're seeing my notes. That's just weird. And now I'm going to be reading all my notes all the way through. But anyway, as I was saying, we would get to work with organizations of all different shapes and sizes, whether it's from aged care through to a food retailer, through to a legal firm. And that's because the strategic lens that we put on apply to all sectors. It doesn't really matter so much about the initiatives that go into it. So it's really around the process rather than initiatives. So today I'm going to talk you through the process of how you can design and progress your own sustainability strategy within your organization. And this is specifically designed for individuals that are within organizations. Maybe you're an SME that want to create some change internally. So I've tried to design this presentation for that purpose. All right, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to talk a little bit about. There we go. Here's the agenda. I want to briefly talk you through the business case for sustainability very quickly. Then I'll talk you through the 6 core steps that we follow. Now, these are 6 core steps that there's no major IP here. They're all relatively straightforward. But what's important, again, is the process that you go through. And then at the end, I'll try and identify, take some questions from you. A couple of things that I want to say. This whole thing could be covered off as a whole business unit, sorry, as a whole university unit. So I'm going to cover this through very, very quickly. If you have any questions, then my emails at the end, you're more than welcome to reach out. The other thing I should say is that, as I said, this is about developing the strategy document. It's not necessarily around designing the initiatives that go into it. There are many places that you can look for waste initiatives or carbon initiatives. This is around how you pull all those pieces together. And as I said, what I'm trying to do here is account for people that have different budgets or different approaches to sustainability. You might be in a small business with 0 budget. You might be in a multinational organization that has loads of budget and not really knowing how to progress that. So that's the stuff I'm going to talk with you about today. Let's dive right in. I should say, in the context throughout this whole presentation, I'm going to be using some little icons and legends to help you understand what I'm talking about. If you have loads and loads of cash, then you see this little guy. I'll talk about ways you can do it that might require a little bit of budget. And you'll see this dude running around with sacks of money. If you have no cash, but this guy that has no money whatsoever. And at the end of each section, I'll try and introduce a few great takeaways, also known as Greta's, our fearless leader. She will have all the wisdom for us to take away. All right. So building the business case. Now, one thing I want to say is that, we had this discussion before, is that this is a big topic in itself. I could spend the next 90 minutes talking about this, and unfortunately, I don't have time to go through that in detail today. But what I can do is guide you to a learning module that we've developed, which is really on the what and the why of sustainability. That learning module will be out shortly. And then I'll try and take you through the ideas of building a business case. It's important that you do that in the right way. Today, we're going to focus on the how. But I do think it's important that we have a little look at some of the things around sustainability. I'm going to rush through this part. What do we mean when we talk about organizational sustainability? Now, it's only been a few minutes into the talk, but suddenly here we go. Oh, there we go. Oldie, but a goodie. Everyone knows this. And the reason why this diagram works well is because it helps us understand that sustainability is about broadening our understanding of the externalized impacts of doing business. It's not just around the economics, not just around making money. It's around understanding the impact on society. It's also about understanding the impact on the environment and putting the governance structures around that to make sure that we can do it. So this is an oldie, and there are various different methods and ways that have been integrated into sustainability, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But really, this is a tool. Sustainability is a tool for business leaders and business decision makers to help broaden their understanding of the impacts of doing business. And I also should say it's much more about than just the environment as well. A lot of people think sustainability is just about the environment. Really, our best approach, best practice approach is the full breadth of that. The other thing to say is sustainability isn't just about mitigating negative circumstances or negative impact. It's about promoting positive impacts of doing business as well. So it's not only about mitigating negative impacts of doing business. It's about also promoting positive impacts. There's also a lot of different terms in relation to sustainability, and a lot of people get confused around what they are. From one end of the spectrum being corporate social responsibility, that tend to have been more of an isolated approach. That's kind of old school now. Through to ESG, or environmental social governance, that's more of an investor lens. We'll see that by publicly listed companies will have ESG audits, and that's really around what are the things that are impacting decision-making in organizations. And as we move along that spectrum, we see that there's more of a sustainable or more of an integrated approach, restorative or for-purpose approach. That's really around like where, for example, B Corps might sit. And then we've got the regenerative business. That they're the ones that exist purely to have a net positive impact, absolute net positive impact on society and the planet. But really what we're trying to do here, that while the details are different, all of them are trying to do good in different ways. It's just really around how much it's being integrated into decision-making within organizations. I want to briefly talk about the why. And as I said, there's going to be a whole other module on this, but it's important that you frame this as an internal stakeholder when you're trying to build up a sustainability strategy or trying to pitch it to your boss, that you frame it the right way. For example, we know that the stuff we care about is basically our impending extinction. We've got climate change, we've got biodiversity loss, we've got overconsumption, we've got food and agriculture use that's decimating our various different ecosystems. But and also equally, we're worried about global inequality, gender inequality, wealth inequality, poverty, Indigenous rights. These are all things that we care about and probably the drivers as to why we want to do it. Now you can either maybe go to your boss and go, oh, the world's collapsing, we've got 10 years before our carbon footprint dies, or whatever it is, freak out. But I don't feel like that's going to be the sort of language that your boss is really going to engage with. Instead, you're much better off talking to him about the long-term financial resilience, delivering cost savings, promoting collaboration, innovation, addressing investor requirements, reducing portfolio vulnerability. Another idea is how we can build trust amongst our customers and staff. So a strong sustainability strategy will support employee satisfaction. It'll position us at the centre of our communities. It'll build cohesive vision and drive. So these are some of the things that you need to, when you're pitching your sustainability strategy to whoever you are, that you integrate into your pitch. And that kind of can be summarised in making sure that you demonstrate to your boss that if we deliver a purposeful approach to business, then we'll receive support and receive profits accordingly. Another way to think about it is you could be like Dwight, this guy, be a hero within the office, green warrior. You could chain yourself to a desk, protest. You do that. In fact, I challenge some of you guys to chain yourself to a desk if you're not seeing the results. Otherwise, you can speak in their language. Set formal meetings with your boss, have a project plan on how you're going to approach it. Set some strategic objectives. If possible, make the business case for budget. That's what this process is going to be about. Doing this over the next few steps will help you do that. Very quickly, this is what we term as being what best practice corporate sustainability looks like. Some people ask me, well, what is it? And I say, strategy equals science plus stakeholders. So good evidence-based sustainability strategy equals science plus stakeholders. We can't just go ahead and make roadmaps that we think are going to be right. We need to have the data to back it up. Luckily here at Edge, we've got a whole bunch of data analysts that know their stuff, and I'll talk through about that in a minute. We also put a lot of effort into materiality, understanding what stakeholders, stakeholders care about, so that we have that evidence base to create a long-term roadmap. All right, let's start talking through the 6 core steps. The first one is establish the baseline. I'm just going to take a moment to drink and get over my embarrassment of sharing my slides with you. My notes with you before, how awkward. Anyway, so first we need to set a baseline. We're assuming that you've had the discussion with your boss, talked about what some of the objectives that you want to achieve out of the sustainability strategy. You may have been given a little bit of budget, but you need to outline a process for them, and this is the process that you go through. First thing you need to do is establish a baseline from which you measure progress. And that might be, basically we need to know where we currently are in order to know where we need to get to. And unfortunately, this first step can sometimes be the most complex, and is usually the reason why organizations sometimes tend to stumble at the first stage. Things we can consider when establishing a baseline. First of all, it's a benchmark to progress over time. Baseline can also be used to help us understand operational hotspots, like where do we need to focus our strategy. It'll help us understand how your product or service can be integrated or impacted by others and on others. It might also be for a certification or a standard. And you may be familiar with this baselining approach. In organizations, it's a pretty important step. And there's a bunch of things you might need to consider when developing up a baseline. What's your period that you're developing it for? Is it financial year? Is it a calendar year? What's your scope? Is it just your operations? I would say that's probably not enough. You probably need to look at your supply chain, either upstream or downstream. What metrics are you using to help you understand that baseline? So is it a per dollar basis, like for example, kilogram or tons of carbon per employee, the tons of carbon per dollar of sales, that sort of thing. And your emissions factors. So where are you sourcing emissions factors from? Where are they? That's a bit technical, but I'll get to that in a minute. So some of the things you need to consider in your baseline. All right, how do we do it? First is our poor man version. It's called Excel. Unfortunately, there's no easy way around it. You need to go out, get all the data. How much are you using in printing? How much are you using catering? How much are you using cleaning? That means usually speaking to your procurement guy. What we do here at Edge is we provide a spreadsheet and we say, fill this out. This is for this period, fill it out. This is the unit, tell us how much you've got. That's great and relatively straightforward. Even unfortunately, this phase can sometimes be a little bit difficult. If you've got a really good accountant or a really good procurement person, they should be able to fill that out. That's good for setting a benchmark. It's good for drawing a line in the sand. It doesn't really tell us much about a story. It doesn't really tell us around, do I, for example, need to look at what I'm buying rather than say my flights? They're all different units. How do we compare? How do we compare them? I don't know where to focus on this one if I was to look at this. So what we can use instead is some sort of metric, a common metric. And in most of our work, we use the metric of carbon. The reason we use carbon is that not only is it an obvious metric to help us understand climate change, but also pretty much everything can be converted into carbon. And there are a few ways that you can do this. You can ask your suppliers to give you the carbon amount. So most flights, for example, most flight suppliers or even car fleet suppliers will be able to give you how much carbon's been used as a result of fuel consumption. Or you can use an online calculator. Again, this is the poor man's version, and there are various different calculators that you can use there to have a look at. So this is a simple carbon footprint. We can see that this is actually for an office-based or professional service organization. If you're like us, most of our carbon footprint used to come from flights. I say that as I'm sitting in this room by myself instead of, I haven't left this room in months. But anyway, it used to come from flights, but now obviously I think that would be significantly less. But it's also limited in that it only looks in our operations, right? We can see, this is usually roughly around the right sort of mix, but only tells us about our operations. It really doesn't tell us the whole story. It's important that we capture that whole story, and I'll tell you why. Here's a complete organizational carbon footprint that our team did for us for a chicken retailer. Right? Now, I thought I'd show you the difference between Australia and New Zealand, for example, and they both sell the same thing, but they have very different footprints. So you can see that chicken, for example, in New Zealand is about half of the footprint. So we can see that a lot of it comes from not their operations. So if you can see, it's not their electricity, it's not their air travel, it's actually the stuff that they buy, the stuff that they bring into the organization that has the biggest footprint. And you can see also a nice little difference between Australia and New Zealand. Any ideas on why that might be the difference? They probably have relatively the same amount. It's not because New Zealand's selling more chicken, because the energy intensity of their electricity grid is much, much, much less than Australia. So Australia has got really intense electricity grid. So in Australia, we might say, hey, you guys got to focus on energy efficiency. You got to focus on using less electricity. And to our New Zealand friends, you got to figure out ways to have less carbon intensive chicken. That's a bit harder. Yeah, but I can give you an idea of where you need to focus some of your ideas, some of your initiatives. Also, this is a carbon footprint we did for an online clothing retailer. We can see on the left here that their operations makes up about 1%. That's their offices. That's all of their offices. That's their lights. That's, that tiny little slither is what they do. And this is what they buy. All of that big blue circle is what they buy. So really, if you're just looking at your offices, your lights, your Ubers, really not a very big part of the story. You actually have to start thinking about what's the impact of the stuff we buy, what's the impact of the stuff that we get into our business. And we can see in this particular instance, a lot of it's about what they buy, some of it's about products, the use of the product sold. So in the context of clothes, that might be the way they're washed, for example, a bit of transport. So you can see the story gets much more nuanced as we start diving into some of the more detailed LCA, life cycle assessment. And that's the reason why an LCA really does add that richness. It helps us understand where we need to focus on rather than just a simple Excel spreadsheet. Unfortunately, it might be the reason why if you're trying to do a sustainability strategy on your own, this might be the one area that it may be worth forking out a bit of money for to get the experts to do. All right, so what are the Gretas telling us? What are the Gretas telling us? Greta, give us your wise words. Keep a record of your parameters and assumptions. There's no point doing a baseline one year and then doing it totally differently the next. Get your suppliers to do the heavy lifting. You're the ones paying them. Make them give you the data. Perfection is the enemy of the good. Don't try and do everything perfectly. If you can just set up some parameters, get as much data as you can, it's at least somewhere to start. Just make sure when you get the data again next year, you account for all those changes so you can see at least how you perform. Okay, I have seriously no idea if anyone's still there, if anyone's still watching. I can't even see the little thing on my screen anymore because I stuffed it up. Could be here just talking myself. Anyway, I'm going to keep going. Next step, determine what your stakeholders care about. So really, I think what I said before is that best practice sustainability is firstly around the data on one side versus, well, there we go. I've got 50 people watching. Holy moly. The data on one side and what people care about on the other side. All right. And so this process is called a materiality assessment. I'm going to quickly talk you through it. Materiality assessment is a formal exercise used to determine how important specific environmental, social, and governance-related topics are to an organisation. Really, this is about really important tool. Basically, what happened was the guys at GRI, Global Reporting Initiative, realised that, hey, if we keep asking the CEOs and the shareholders what's most important to them, they're basically just going to see making money. And we know that's not the most important thing. So we need to figure out a way to actually start understanding the external impacts of the business, of what their business is doing, and making sure they start to realise and everyone else starts to realise what else is important rather than just making money. So it's a way of bringing an external voice into these topics. And this actually, yeah. So I'm going to just dive in a little bit. There are a couple of different ways that we can conduct a materiality process. We've got our poor guy there and our rich guy, or poor, I should say, I've got here guys, but it could be a poor girl or a rich girl. Tactics, interviews, awesome way to get to capture information. Also, or staff workshops, SurveyMonkey. They're really easy, simple ways to try and capture some of this information. Basically, what happens is that we create a list of different issues that we think are most important to us. Is our business, what's most important to us? Is it carbon? Is it employee retention? Is it climate resilience? Is it packaging? Is it plastics? Is it how much we use paper? Is it water? Oh, who knows? And basically giving them the opportunity to determine what should be on top of that list. There might be a more in-depth process. Some of the time with larger organizations, we use those surveys, we use those interviews, but we also might do a policy, a legislative review. We also do a media review. What issues do the public care about? So for example, we just did one for a mining company, and there's been a little bit of stuff in the news recently around, for example, Indigenous engagement in mining, the impact that can have. That's a classic example of an external risk to business that might not seem financial, but ends financial, that sort of thing. So this, for example, was for that same retailer, and we had all the different types of initiatives. We shortlisted initiatives. This is 11 different initiatives, material issues that we cut them down to, and that's through a process of tightening up. Hey, here's all the different things that we think could be important to your business. Let's tighten those up to a final list of issues and see how And then what I'd like to, what we do is try and see who's important, what's most important to whom. And we sometimes might give weighting to different types of groups. There are various different ways that organizations undertake their materiality process. Some are secret source IP, some is relatively not, but basically it's different ways of being able to order these. And usually they'll almost always end up in some sort of materiality matrix like this. This is the way the GRI suggested. So we've got two different axes here. We've got what's important to us, what's important to us internally, and what's important to our stakeholders, what's important to our, what's externally most important. There are a couple of different lenses we can put on here. And here's like, how much do we care? How much do they care? Or how much do other people care? Or more importantly, how much does it matter? How much does it matter to us? How much does it matter to everyone else? So we can see here, for example, the number 11, in this particular instance, nutrition is really important to that particular organization. According to the people that we spoke to, the public actually didn't care that much about nutrition. But when it came to things like animal welfare, really important externally, internally wasn't a priority, primarily because it was something that they usually do all the time. Another way to think about this when we do this is, a lot of these things are obviously all important, but what we need to think about is, what are the things we're going to boost in our strategy? What are the things that are going to be a focus area? What are things we're already doing really well? Just put that on the back burner, that's already important, like work health and safety, for example. Usually pretty high priority. It's going to have to remain important, but it's not going to be something we're going to boost. And what don't we care about? For example, water use and supply corruption. No one cares about it, apparently. Here's some other examples of materiality matrices. People do it in different ways. For example, here, Fujitsu, it's important to stakeholders, significant to Fujitsu group. Dexys have done another one. You'll see lots of them around. They roughly follow the same thing. Of course, you've got these areas in the top right-hand corner. That's important to everyone. That's the highest important, going down to least important. All right, so once we've determined what our we've determined what our stakeholders care about. Let's see what Greta is telling us. Give us your wise words, Greta. The wider the engagement, the better the results. With wise words there, Greta. If we can get as many people involved as we can, then we will get a richer picture of what's important to people. Wise. Be prepared for results you don't necessarily agree with. This is particularly challenging for me as a sustainability consultant, especially seeing when things that I'm passionate about get pushed right to the bottom. And as a objective sustainability consultant, many times I need to bite my lip and go, okay, if that's what you guys think, no problem. Future will prove you wrong, but that's okay. And then we let them do their thing. And then ultimately the strategy is around, I'll tell you what we do in a minute, and I'll show you how we counter that argument. All right, then we co-design initiatives. And really this is a process where we take the footprint and we take the materiality piece and we start engaging people. And this is the funnest part of the whole process, because now we have the data in our hands to be able to actually go to those leaders who thought those issues weren't important and start, inverted commas, teaching them a lesson. And this is my favorite part of this process, not because we're trying to, not because you as an internal advocate are trying to say they're wrong. We're basically just saying, this is what the data is saying. It's really important that we continue to take our own personal opinion out of it and let the data do the talking. And the other thing to say is that when we're with co-design initiatives, now often with this, I could essentially go and get all my team to, like get a waste team to develop up all waste initiatives, and I could get the carbon team to help us identify carbon reduction opportunities, for example. I'll get my climate resilience team to help us reduce the impact of extreme weather events. But organizations don't want to be told what they need to do. They need to come up with the ideas themselves. I'll repeat that again. Organizations don't want to be told what they need to do. They want to come up with the ideas themselves. They might think the other way around. They might hire you because they want to be told, but I assure you in reality, they want to come up with the ideas. So you need to at least give them that opportunity to come up with those ideas. For example, I'll use these tools. They'll say, as I said, we'll come into it and we'll go, waste is the biggest issue in the world. We've got to deal with waste. It's killing us. Everyone hates, waste. It's all about waste. But then I'll look at this and I'll be like, well, yes, but waste is only 4% of your carbon footprint. Now, we know that carbon is only one lens for us to understand the environmental impact of things. Obviously, particularly around plastic waste, has a whole bunch of other ecological impacts. But it does demonstrate the way in which some issues tend to get blown out of proportion in terms of the context of different, when compared to other issues. So we can see here that waste and recycling for this particular organisation is quite high. It made their boost list, because even though it was only 4%, we know it's quite highly visible, and we know therefore that it's quite important. It's also taught us that, hey, we need to focus on this big chunk of the pie, and the only way that we can focus on that is to, I'm not even sure if you can see my screen, but I'm saying we need to focus on chickens and things in the food and beverage we buy. So that means that sustainable procurement needs to be up here, number 3. Great, we've got that aligned, that looks good. So what issues can we do in sustainable procurement? So we have this great narrative. These workshops are so awesome. And we have usually integrated with some visioning, which is like, what does success look like? Okay, what are the initiatives that we do in here? And we get them to come up with the ideas. I've got an initiative list here. This is just a long list of different initiatives that we had for one particular client. And I'm sure that you're all waiting for different things that you can do under these different areas. This is just a quick one that we developed for one client. But I think what I'm trying to say here is that it's important that you come up with a whole bunch of different initiatives, because they're going to get whittled down. So keep the list long, come up with as many ideas as you can, keep the ideas blue sky, because we'll have an opportunity to stress test and rationalize those in a little while. And you can see here that I've already started putting these initiatives into different focus areas or different pillars, and we go through a process of kind of taking all the ideas in different sections, and then we'll draft them into a strategy document. So what's Greta telling us about this issue? Give us your wise words, Greta. Use the data to guide the focus areas. Don't go with someone who feels like, hey, this is a hunch. I feel like this is an area we need to focus on. That data must support it. Encourage blue sky thinking, especially if you've got a big vision. We're writing strategies for 5, 10 years time. What might be the case now is not going to be the case in 5 and 10 years time. So make sure you encourage blue sky thinking, especially in those workshop environments. There cannot be a wrong answer. Unless the DAO doesn't support it. And make them feel like they come up with the idea. Make them feel like they come up with the idea. You might have a whole bunch in your pocket. In fact, the best way you can do it is if you have some ideas, just secretly go around to someone and go, hey, how about this? And then they'll usually run with it, and then they become the hero. Trust me, it'll make your life a lot easier. All right, how much time we got? What are we doing in time? Oh, we got lots of time. What are we doing up here with different... there's still 50 people on the line. Jeez, I thought you'd have something else to do. Okay, great. Then we draft the framework. So we've got all these ideas. We've got focus areas that have been supported by data. We've got pillars that have been supported by data. We've got focus areas that have been supported by data. We've got some ideas on initiatives. Let's start putting some structure to all these things. We've all seen these sort of things. I need to give a big shout out to all these great companies. The reason I put these up here is that a lot of these strategic frameworks, some of them we're responsible for, some of them we're not. They somehow tend to, and I know people at all these different organizations. We've got Frasers, Stockland, Hammond Care, Brambles, awesome leaders in sustainability, and also have some really, really, really good things they're doing. We can also see that they've got these different structures, the way they try and frame their sustainability issues. Common themes, usually some sort of focus area, some sort of pillar, some sort of focus area that goes off it, and then initiatives that sit under each of those areas. Now, basically what that looks like is, whoops, have a pillar sitting behind it. You usually have a pillar, you have a focus area, you have a metric. How are we going to measure change in that area? So when it comes to energy and carbon, we've decided the best metric for us to measure that change is going to be percentage of energy sourced from renewables, for example. What's our target going to be? Well, our target is going to be 100% renewable energy by 2030. How are we going to get there? Good question. It might be a PPA. There might be a renewable energy rollout. There'll be a whole bunch of things that will help you increase your renewable energy. Waste to landfill, for example. So the idea is this is the structure that you need to measure your success. You can't manage what you can't measure. You can't manage what you can't measure. So make sure that you have some metrics and targets that can be measured the whole way through. All right, Greta, what have you got for us? Can't manage what you can't measure. You just stole that from me. Targets are not a tattoo. I spend so much time working with clients on targets. And yes, it's important that we make targets achievable, and there's a whole methodology, a range of methodologies on how we set targets. Do we set ambitious targets? Do we set achievable targets? Do we set science-based targets? Science-based targets are a good option, but also we can maybe go even beyond science-based targets. There are various different ways that we can set targets, and usually that's an organic process that we'll go through with clients depending on their level of ambition, depending on their level of certainty, their willingness to take risks. But the key thing is that they're not a tattoo. You know, it's okay. You can change your target. Stress test and rationalize. So this process is really around going from, okay, we've got a list of initiatives, we think they're right, we've got our focus areas, we think they're right, it's backed by data. Can we just make sure this is going to actually work before we publish this? Because if we publish it and we realize that we have totally not costed this properly, or we've totally not thought it through, then we're in trouble. So there's a bunch of ways you can do that. Poor man's version, do a simple impact versus effort. We roughly know, for example, that going 100% renewable energy in that top right-hand corner is going to be a lot harder than, say, doing energy efficiency programs down here, or developing an air travel policy. And again, these are about feel, they're usually about experience, but they can be around impact. We know that our impact areas really should be informed by our footprint. It's just more the effort thing that we really need to look at there as well. And so there's a couple of ways you can think about this, and this is a really great way that we like to do it because it allows us to understand, okay, these are our hero, these are our flagships. We need to make sure that we work on those top right-hand ones. It might take a long time. And I personally do a lot of work, for example, in social impact program. And a good social impact program might take 4 or 5 years to realize. But if you do it properly, it can be really measurable and a great outcome. That's not something that you can just click overnight. Whereas down the bottom, you might have these quick wins. You say, hey, we're going on this journey. Let's focus on getting some things over the line super quickly so that we can show like we're making progress. Or if you wanted to do, you can do a full feasibility assessment. You could do a marginal abatement cost curve. We've got a bunch of economic, environmental economists here who will be able to do all that. How much is every dollar we invest? What are we going to get in terms of return of carbon abatement? You could do a multi-criteria analysis or multi-criteria assessment. It's a whole bunch of different ways that you can prioritize these different initiatives. And the more scientific you want to get, obviously the more laborious and potentially the more costly as well. All right, Greta, what have you got for us? Buy-in is just as important as costing. This is really important. We've just lost one participant, down to 49. Buy-in is just as important as costing. That means that if you can sell in a vision or an idea to your CEO, they'll run with it, no matter what the cost. I've learned that from experience. If you can sell in an idea with leadership, then cost somehow becomes irrelevant. Be transparent with your prioritization process. There can't be some sort of weird back of the envelope, hey, we're doing this as opposed to that. When we develop strategies, I in fact recommend, especially in the public documentation that we develop, we suggest that clients are really transparent. This is the reason why I've gone with this issue over that issue. Here's the carbon footprint. Here's what our materiality is saying. This is the reason why we're doing it. We're not trying to code any pockets or anything like that. Right, final step, and I have a few minutes. is assign, responsibility, and monitor. Great, so this is the final step, and usually the step where everyone falls over. They'll be like, sweet, I've got this focus areas, I've got my initiatives, I'm done. Wrong. Someone said to me, I think it was my old boss, he said, strategy is only as good as implementation. It's true. Unless stuff gets implemented, might as well not have done the work. And probably the most frustrating thing as a sustainability strategist or any sort of strategist, I used to work in strategic planning, same deal. If you can get 50% of the things in your strategy over the line become reality, that is a win. That is a win. So it's really important that strategy is followed up with implementation. That means providing your organization or your clients or whoever you're working for all the tools to do that. And that means looking at who are the people that are going to deliver it, what are the processes that we need to implement to make sure that happens, and what sort of systems do we need in place to make sure that that occurs. And I will usually have a dedicated workshop to do this in some sort of way, make sure that we turn whatever insights we have in the strategy into a strategic plan, an implementation roadmap. These are different types of roadmaps that we can see here that we've developed: people, process, planet, all sorts of different stuff. But what's key, another option is a RACI chart or RASCI chart. Make sure that you give people the responsibility to run with it. Make it their issue to run with. Oh yeah, what's Greta telling us? Share load, leverage passionate individuals. A lot of the work that I also do is really taking that strategy and turning it into an employee engagement program. So does that mean having green advocates or green teams, or does that mean having a sustainability person, like a dedicated resource to run your sustainability strategy? Make sure that you don't take it on all yourself, because it will fail. Monitor, 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 monitor. Basically, have some sort of measurement system in place. If you're collecting data once a year, you're not doing the right job. Highly recommend putting in systems and processes to help you measure and monitor. There are a whole bunch out there on the market in terms of software, data management software. You might be able to integrate it into one of your existing software management providers, like if you've got Salesforce, or if you've got, I don't know what they are, those other ones. There's a bunch of them. I'm not going to mention them because I'll be doing their job for them. But have a look online, environmental data software management, and then you'll essentially be able to say, oh, cool, here's my carbon footprint of our organization month on month. Very, very helpful. Might cost you $5,000 to $20,000 depending on how big your organization is, but very, very helpful in understanding progress. Okay, that is it. 6 core steps, and I've come in exactly 15 minutes left for questions, I think, unless I'm talking by myself. Step 1, establish your baseline. Step 2, or first step, is when you're giving an online presentation, don't share your notes. Step 1, establish your baseline. Step 2, determine what your stakeholders care about. Step 3, co-design initiatives. Step 4, draft a framework. Step 5, stress test and rationalize. Step 6, assign tasks and monitor. Okay, so let's take some questions. Kate, are you still there?
Yep.
Right, awesome. So what's been happening? I've got some chats going on. I actually saw, wow, there's a whole bunch of things, a whole bunch of, any interesting things going on here? People telling me they can see my notes, how funny. Yep, great, thank you, I'm well aware of that. That's so embarrassing. Yeah, okay, thanks for letting me know about that. Yeah, notes, awesome. Any questions? Come on, all right. Miranda's asked, is it possible to try and do all these steps without executive buy-in at the start, i.e. do it covertly, lower budget and show that it should be done where required? Yeah, it could be. I've seen people do that before, especially if you have access to the data. Sometimes if you go up to your executive and you go, hey, could you just tell us how much you're spending on flights per year? They're going to be like, yeah. I think it's really around having that data collection. It's much better off to have buy-in from the beginning. I think if you can make the business case early, say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. It's not going to cost you money. This is the process that I'm going to take you on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps. You can stop me at any time, and that's fine as well. Okay, great. I got an anonymous. There's so many aspects of this. It's great. Would you suggest skilling up at strategy level? If so, courses, books, thoughts, leaders. Yeah. So strategy is an interesting one. And the process of strategy, because this is what I found interesting as a strategist, is that there's no course on this. There's no course on sustainability strategy. There is on corporate strategy. You can go to an MBA. If you want to learn about corporate strategy, go to an MBA. It'll cost you $150,000. Yeah, I didn't do an MBA. I was thinking about doing an MBA. Instead, I went away and did a master's in sustainable development and applied my experience for marketing and understanding what is it that drives decision-making in organizations, what is it that drives key business drivers, my understanding of corporate strategy, and converted that over and try and combine both the sustainability drivers and the business drivers together. So there are a bunch of good green marketing books that you can use. To be honest, I wish I did have a course that would be able to help design this, but really there's a lot of great thinking out there in terms of green business strategy. I don't have anything on top of my head right at the moment. I know I've read them before. If you want to get a really, really nuanced one that's a bit cliched, and I'm really sorry, I tried to go the whole talk without mentioning this company, and I feel embarrassed that I'm mentioning it, but Let My People Go Surfing at Patagonia. Awkward. I said it, there you go. I usually don't last 48 minutes before I say that company's name, because I love them, obviously. But that's a great story about organic development of integrating purpose into a business. What's the name of the software, the environmental software management tools that you have used? Oh, anonymous. I'm going to reel some off. I need to declare that I used to work for one. Kinesis is a company. They're great. Busy's another company. There's another one which used to be Agility is another one. Most of the big software providers will do some form of that as well. They're good. Each of them will have different benefits. I think it's important that you have a really easy to use platform that has a really good interface. So go for the ones that have put the best effort into making it simple to use and that they do the heavy lifting on the data. And by that I mean, it might cost you a little bit more for them to collect all your electricity data and put it into the tool. But if it's an easy to use interface, you can click, even better, you've got a map, you can click on the building. Oh, look, there's our electricity consumption. There's our water consumption. There is our total carbon consumption. That also allows you to do things like, hey, I'm going to put a dot on the map as to when I start doing an energy efficiency upgrade, and let's see if that works. Or, hey, I'm going to put a dot on the map. I'm going to put a line on the chart as to where my target is, and we need to make sure that by 2025, the number's going down below that. Make sure that whatever software platform that you use is able to do all those little nifty tricks that align to your strategy. What else have we got here? Which framework do you use most frequently with customers? GRI, B Corp, SDGs. So GRI is obviously the one that is most universal, and it's very handy if you're, for example, a publicly listed company. GRI has done some great work in terms of updating their standards, so they're plug and play. So when one standard gets old, they can update it and plug it back in. They used to have a system where you had to update the whole thing, which didn't really work. So so B Corp is a standard, not a framework. I think B Corp. I'm not going to get killed by that. I might get killed by that because I am obviously very integrated massive supporter of B Corp. But what I'm talking about is from a reporting point of view, depending on the size of your organization, GRI and SDG work well. B Corps, what I found with B Corp is it's a really great driver. It actually, rather than the other two, which is literally, I'm reporting this, I'm reporting that, B Corp provides you the framework through which to actually better your business. So it gives you tips and hints. The framework itself is set up in a way that says, hey, look, I don't have that many points here in terms of how I work or support my employees. I actually need to focus on something there. So having a B Corp driven strategy, or at least do your B Corp impact assessment at the start of your strategy and then at the end, will help you understand the areas that you need to focus on. Hope that answers that question. And SDGs are obviously, and this is really important, I want to get this across. Do not use SDGs if you're just going to stick a logo up there on what, what are the goals? Oh, it's water. Yeah, obviously it's water. Instead, take it down to the next level. Use the SDG compass to identify what is the indicator that you're using to deliver on that goal. So SDG's done a bunch of work, and also there's a great new thing between B Corps and SDG now, which allow you to cross-reference those, because those labels, just like, oh, water, okay, doesn't really do much. It's just a sticker. Actually, you want to be able to say, this is what we are doing specifically to help support, do our role in supporting the Sustainable Development Goals. Are there any, what else we got here? Anything else, guys? I'm just trying to look through here. What's the name of greenhouse gas protocol characters are free to use? Yeah, I gave you, Angie, I gave you those in the presentation. I think the slides will be shared around. Greenhouse gas protocol does have a simple calculator. I think it is free to use. Yeah, I think it is free to use. Look, when it comes to calculators, I'm going to be totally brutally honest here. I haven't really, there's a lot of work. If someone wants to take on a project, develop a really good personal footprint calculator. Forget about business. Do one for us. I need one. I was speaking to someone the other day. He's like, oh, we've got to get into Google. They know all our data. Someone works, any of you work for Google or know Google or some of the big data guys, someone has got to be able to make a good personal footprint calculator, because all the data's there. We're all walking around like we're doing credit cards. We know exactly what we're buying. We know exactly where we're going. We know exactly what flights we're on. For me, it's the biggest gap that I see in terms of our whole sustainable journey, both as individuals and as organizations. So can we just start lobbying the big data guys to give us some of the data so we can get better on our footprint? What do we got here? How do we get suppliers on board to help provide transparency in carbon footprint data? Oh, the old supply question. Good one. Good one. Is there any information, other resources? There are other resources. Yes, I feel like that's a, yes, there are other resources. So if you look at Edge's website, we've got some great other webinars on how to engage your suppliers. Supplier engagement is its own thing, it's its own space. You could do it at a high level, or you can start actually working with your suppliers. One of the biggest issues with suppliers and this engagement between procurers and suppliers is that it's always been kind of downstream. It's like, do this, do that, do this. It doesn't work. You actually need to support your suppliers. You need to start with programs, help them. They're going through the same stuff as well. They're also trying to go on this journey. It's not just their responsibility. You can't pass it off to them. You need to support them. So it's important that you deliver programs that enable to support them. And that might also mean changing your relationship with them. That might mean changing your contracting methods and your contracting terms. Say, hey, look, if you do this, we'll continue our contracting terms. We know that it's going to be a bit of work, but we'll extend our contract for 3 years if you can demonstrate that you're doing that. I really recommend you jump on the Edge website and have a look at some of the webinars that are there. My colleague Nicole is doing a whole bunch of great stuff on supply chain engagement. And that'll help you understand some of the things that you can do in that space. So I think I might call it there, if you don't mind. I also, there's just been Kate's just put some stuff up there around questions. My email address is max@edgeenvironment.com. I will be sending around a link to our learning module. Yeah, I think that's it. Oh, there's some funky things going on. And sorry for sharing my notes at the beginning. How awkward. Thanks, Kate.
Hi. Thank you so much, Max. That was such a great session. And also a big thank you to everyone that joined us live and online. If everyone could please just take out a couple minutes and fill out the feedback form, that would be wonderful. And that's all. Have a wonderful day.
Great. Thanks. Bye-bye.